Are you ready to see brutal Kingside attacks? The attack on h7 is a common tactical motif in chess, particularly against a castle king. It often involves a bishop sacrifice on h7, followed by a queen check, and potentially checkmate. Now, to execute this attack successfully, certain conditions need to be met, such as the absence of a knight on f6 and the bishop not being on e7. White wants to attack the h7 square, and so proceeds with the move pawn to h4. And let's say the response by black is bishop to b7. Well, white can still carry out with the same move, knight to g5. However, let's look at the crucial move, or the critical move, which happens to be pawn to h6. After h6, knight g5. Now, there are several possibilities here. Pawn captures on g5, and after the recapture, the h-file is open, and so is the b1 to h7 diagonal. Now, two possible moves by black here are pawn to f5 and pawn to g6. We're going to look at pawn to g6 first. Depending on what white does, it could be white who ends up in the worst position. Let's see. Pawn to f4, rook e8, bishop to e4 with the idea of sacrificing on g6. Black returns a piece in order to get some space and make room for the king's escape. But suppose white captures on g6 instead of accepting the sacrifice. Bishop to f6. Bishop takes f7 check, king recaptures on f7, and now rook to h7, bishop g7, pawn to d5. Now the bishop is pinned, and the move here is knight to f6. Now the queen holds the knight. Bishop takes f6, and if now queen can capture or king can capture. If king captures, queen c3 check, and now pawn to e5. F takes e5, rook takes e5, rook takes g7, queen takes on d5 with the idea of checking on h1. Rook h7, king g6, rook takes c7, and now queen to h1 check, king d2, queen h6 check, king e1, and after queen to h5, the pawn on e2 comes under attack.
The summarized over-aggression was punished.
Okay, now after the bishop captures on f6, now queen captures on f6, so what is the move here? How does white continue? Well, queen takes c7 is check, King to g8, threatening the rook, but also the queen threatens to capture the rook on b8. Rook c1, king takes h7, and queen takes b8. Now bishop d7, queen c7, and now queen f7. Pawn to d6, advancing a pawn,
And black
is ready to push e5, exploiting the weakness of white's king side. The pawn's on f4 and the pawn on g3.
Now, in the lines we just examined, it was the ninja who actually prevailed against the samurai's attack. Now let's listen to the ninja explain how he was able to defeat the samurai.
Defending against the h7 attack can be achieved by maintaining a knight on f6, advancing a pawn to block the queen's path, or creating an escape route for the king. However, playing h6 can be a prophylactic move to prevent the attack, but it may also weaken the king's side.
In this continuation, after knight g5, pawn captures on g5, and after the recapture, g6 or f5 is played, but looking at g6, that is what we're examining. f4, rook e8, bishop e4, and returning a piece is important. Now, instead of playing bishop takes g6 with the over-aggression, just take on g5, queen captures, and queen d3. Now, black does get to equalize here after bishop b7, bishop takes on b7, and after the recapture, queen to f3, hitting the rook on b7. Rook b8, pawn to g4, pawn to f5, and capture. White wants to keep the attack going, so queen g3. The rook lift to the 7th rank is also critical. Rook f1, queen d5, and now queen takes g6 check. That was the purpose of the rook lift. Queen h6 and rook f8. Rook over to h1 and knight f6. If queen to h8, then the king can escape to f7 and can continue to either e8 or e7, etc. But king to d2, queen g5, a trade of queens. Now we're into a bishop versus knight endgame with 2 rooks for each side. King d3, rook g3 check, king c4, and knight e4. Now the counterplay is going after weak pawns. Knight d6 check, king b3, knight to f5, rook h2, knight captures on d4 check, king c4, and now pawn to c5. Now rook and pawn endgame after bishop takes d4, c d4, and king d4, and both sides are equal in material.
And black equalizes.
And now we're going to look at other possibilities. After the move, pawn h4, h6, and now knight g5, capture, recapture, and now looking at the move, pawn to f5 instead of g6. Now en passant, capturing with the knight to guard the h7 square, and now Bishop to e4, trade on e4, and now queen d5. White will just carry out with queen h7 check, and the king steps to the f7 square. Rook h5, queen g2, pawn d5. King e8, queen g6 check, king d8, and black escapes.
And now we're going to look at one more continuation before concluding this video.
Now after h4, bishop b7. Black chooses the bishop b7 move instead of playing g6 or f5 or h6, but chooses this move to develop the queen side. While white continues with knight g5, and then after knight f6, pawn to d5, sacrificing a pawn to get the bishop on c3 open with the threat of capturing on f6. And now g6. And from here the continuation is a queenside castle. Now the move played here is knight captures on d5. So how does white continue? Pawn e4, bishop takes d5 check, hg5, queen captures on g5 with check, and now the move is bishop to d2. White has won a piece. Queen f6, ed5, queen captures on f2, and now rook captures h7. Now this is combinative play by white. Give your opponent an offer he cannot refuse. King captures on h7, rook over to h1 check, king g8. Now do you see the next move? I'm going to give you a few seconds to spot the next move for white. The move is rook to h8 check, decoy. King captures on h8, and now bishop to c3 with a discovery. And after e5, queen captures queen on f2. And now f6, pawn to g4, g5, queen f5. And here, the ninja concedes. The samurai is the victor in this line. Thank you for watching. That is all I have for now. Please don't forget to like, comment, share, and subscribe. And stay tuned for my next video.